who's its Arson Asher submitted. So this is Last Duchess. Who's the author of this poem? Some Old English happening, perhaps. Done. Save. Finished at hold on. Oops. Not even that you want you just write like that? Yeah, if you write formally, then write formally. There's definitely no issue with that. Americans aren't formal. We suck. Save the photos. Okay, by Robert Browning. Yeah, cool. So here's the poem we were working on. I'm just gonna call it 100 words. Because I don't really care about the actual word count. It's the wrong thing. New note. Add an image. That one. And then add this one. Right? Does that look like the whole thing? Arson Asher. Okay. Dutch people are very informed, not into authority, and blunt. Interesting. I go up to people and say, "Suh, dude." So, this is by Robert Browning, which is a name I recognize. I think you're missing the last line. Bronze for me. No. I just put it like all the way to the bottom of the page. And then breast and west should be consecutive. We like formal address to someone? Well, I won't formally say "suh, dude," but I will go up to someone like "see insters of du" in German. Sure. I don't know German. Move the candle so y'all can see the October logo. Okay. How we do analysis here, or reading and critique. And we're critiquing Robert Browning, who's probably dead, but that's okay. Browning. English poet and playwright. He looks pretty dead. Okay, this is fun. We read through a couple times just for pure literary enjoyment, and then we will go through, and after a couple reads, we will start to analyze. I want to learn German one day, but the way they count numbers is weird. I want to learn German as well. I want to learn German. I want to learn Russian. I want to learn Arabic. I want to learn Hebrew. I want to learn Spanish. I want to learn Greek. There's a few things I want to learn. I want to learn Hindi. Closest comparison is saying sir and ma'am consistently. Gotcha. I don't do that. But in America, the South very commonly is more formal, where they'll say sir a lot and ma'am, right? Want to learn Cantonese and Mandarin. Love to visit China one day. That is a hefty task, learning either of those languages. Good luck. Anyway, My Last Duchess. That's my last Duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive, I call. That piece of wonder now fra Pandulph's hands, worked busily a day. And there she stands. Will it please you sit and look at her, I said, fra Pandulph by design. There's verse here, right? And I'm reading it really bad. Is this pentameter? Iambic? Okay, iambic pentameter. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive, I call. That piece a wonder now fra Pandulph's hands, worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will't please you sit and look at her, I said, fra Pandulph by design, for never read. Strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seemed as they would ask me if they durst have such a glance came there, so not the first. Are you to turn and ask thus, sir? 'Twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek, perhaps. Fra Pandulph chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad. Too easily impressed, she liked whate'er she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one, my favour at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bow of cherries, some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule. She rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech. Would draw from her alike the proving speech. Or blush, at least she thanked men good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift who'd stoop to blame. This sort of trifling even had you skill in speech which I have not to make your will quite clear to such as one, and say just this or that in you disgusts me, here you miss, or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessened so nor plainly set her wits to yours forsooth and made excuse, in then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whene'er I passed her, but who passed without? Much the same smile this grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together, there she stands, as if alive. Will't please you rise, we'll meet the company below then. I repeat, the Count your master's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self as I avowed. At starting is my object, nay, we'll go together down, sir, together down, Sir Notice Neptune, though, taming a sea-horse thought a rarity, which Klaus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. Oh, reading in verse is hard. You challenge me, Arson Asher. You do challenge me truly. And does anyone have advice for reading in verse? Does anyone know how to do this better than I do? Because I always feel like I'm not reading or iambic pentameter correctly. Sorry, I'm looking at chat now. I mean, nothing is as bad as French. Learn Korean. That's true. Very true, Angel. Love how much you English hate the French. Brazilians too, they stole our lobsters? We've not forgiven from the 100 Years' War. Keep coming here to steal lobsters from your coasts. Dude, that's brutal. President Asher, you have no idea your teachers just read it? Like, did they not read it in verse? Because this is very clearly a poem in verse. Person Asher, I need to know. If your teachers didn't read the iambic pentameter, then I feel sorry for you. Because that's what this is. Did they talk about meter? No, they didn't. They don't care. Oh. Well. Maybe I need to, like, look it up. I need to be better at how to perform iambic pentameter. This is referencing, like, Shakespeare sonnets. Da-dum, 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 right? Dude, I just want maybe just a video. Do y'all want to watch a video? Let's watch a video. I'm gonna put this link in chat, and then I'll be able to get it on my computer because chat's over there too. You don't need to click this. Is that even like, you know what? That's fine. Don't click the link. Okay, cool. I'm gonna show this to y'all. Hey, go away, ad. American political ads. Screen. Okay. Here's all that. Do you all see this fine? There should be no volume yet. Okay. We're here. We are looking at a video of iambic pentameter. Let me know how the volume is.
Hey guys, I'm going to break down iambic pentameter for you today. Oh my god, I mean, what is that thing and why do we care about it? I'm going to explain what it is and I'm going to explain why you need it, how to use it. So if you're an actor, you need to stick around for that. Let's jump in.
Volume's great? Okay.
I'm going to explain this as simply as I possibly can because it can get really convoluted. I'm going to use a musical analogy. So if you've got a little bit of a musical background, hopefully this will help you. And if you don't, it's fairly simple, so hopefully you'll follow along anyway. Iambic pentameter is kind of like the rhythm, like the time signature even, of Shakespeare's verse. It's called verse because it's poetry. And poetry has rhythmic kind of rules. Even if you think about like a haiku, everyone knows
this is so fun.
Syllables in
We're
it.
learning about iambic
Right?
pentameter.
Every break has got a kind of rhythm. Well, Shakespeare's poetry has got a particular rhythm too. So pentameter gives us a clue that there's 5 of something going on here, right? Pentameter, pent like pentagon. It's 5 kind of beats in a bar is the way that I like to think about it. Think of a monologue of Shakespeare. All the lines are about the same length. In each line there's about 5 beats going on there.
Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. They're referred to as feet. I did not know that.
How the beats feel, how they're divided up. If you're a dancer, you're probably used to kind of going 1, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, 8, that kind of thing. In Shakespeare's music, his rhythm is actually divided up into kind of more like a skipping feel, and it starts with the and. So it goes and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. It's quite like do-do, 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 do-do. It has that really kind of galloping feel to it.
Hopefully she actually
Now,
reads
why
some.
on earth does it have 5 beats in a bar/line, you say? Well, actually, the reason that he chose this particular meter is it's the one that is the closest to the rhythm of everyday speech. Now, you might be like, what? Because Shakespeare doesn't sound like everyday speech at all. No, it doesn't in a way because it's poetic and it's old, but actually the rhythms, we use those in everyday life quite a lot. Once you get used to the sound of it, you start hearing them around the place, and there's something really satisfying about the iambic pentameter rhythm. So let's think of one now. I went up to the shops to get some bread, but they had none, and so I went back home. You know, that kind of thing. Now, of course, I don't say it like this in real life. What did you do today? I went up to the shop. No, but
I should do a point redeem. I should have different things. So one should be like talk in iambic pentameter for the next 5 minutes. Same with like do spoken word, modern spoken word voice, kind of thing.
in its own way, that natural rhythm of kind of like bouncy, bouncy, bounce, and then I stop, and bouncy, bouncy, bounce, and then I stop. That kind of thing. That
Okay, so it's
happens all
supposed to
the
stop
time.
at the end of
So
the
now that
lines.
you've heard that rhythm, I want you to listen to people talking and see if you spot that rhythm popping up around the place while they're talking. You'll start to notice it more and more, and it is really satisfying rhythm. So really, to make the most of this rhythm, if you're an actor, what you need to do is make the last word of each line the most important in some way. So that might be some sort of vocal inflection, like maybe it is a little bit of a different pitch, like down inflecting on the end of a line, or up inflecting, or maybe you lengthen the end of the word, or maybe you give it a bit more weight. Do something with the word at the end of the line and see what happens. Really, it should make a bit of a springboard into the next line, but it also kind of keeps control of the flow. It gives you a sense of where things need to land. So that's my very simple explanation of iambic pentameter. Do you have more questions? Can you let me know in the comments below? Because I'd love to know what confuses you about iambic pentameter and what are you struggling with? Let me know so I can help you out with another video. And subscribe if you love Shakespeare.
Okay, she didn't give us an example, but well, she gave us an example, but not like from Shakespeare, but a few tips. Stylish fail. You saw Anthony and Cleopatra in August, half in sign language, half in English, and they kept the rhythm in sign. That is super cool. Anyway, y'all, go, if that was helpful and you want to learn about Shakespeare. Oh, here's a question. When you perform Shakespeare, how obvious should it be? Do they respond? Notice quit acting and dude, what? Not helpful. Now why on earth does it have beats of 5? It's kind of hard for me to understand. I don't hear this too often in real life. I think it's I think it's B because I'm American would be better, but I think it's because I'm an American. I like my version more. Anyway, that's iambic pentameter for y'all. That helped me. So go follow, go subscribe to that channel if you want. Okay, cool. I'm gonna read this again, knowing that is how iambic pentameter is supposed to kind of be. We learn here. I'm new to all of this, particularly iambic pentameter. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive, I call. That piece a wonder now, fra Pandulph's hands, worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will't please you sit and look at her, I said. Fra Pandolf by design, for never read. Strangers like you that pictured continents, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you, but I. And seemed as they would ask me if they durst, how such a glance came there, so not the first. Are you to turn and ask thus? Sir, 'twas not. Her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek, perhaps, for Pandolf chanced to say her mantle laps over my lady's wrist. Too much, or paint, must never hope to reproduce the faint half flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy she had, a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad. Too easily impressed, she liked whate'er she looked on. She looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one my favour at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bowl of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her the white mule. She rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the proving speech, or blush at least she thanked men good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift who'd stoop to blame. This sort of trifling, even had you skill in speech which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such an one, and say just this, or that in you discuss me here you miss, or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessened so, nor plainly set her wits to yours, forsooth, and made excuse, in then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stop, O sir, she smiled no doubt, whene'er I passed her, but who passed without. Much same the smile this grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together, there she stands. As if alive, will't please you rise, we'll meet the company below, then I repeat, the Count, your master's known munificence, is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed, at staring is my object, nay, will go together down Sir Notice Neptune, though taming a sea-horse thought a rarity, which Klaus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. Sorry, Sarima, I'm getting a call from my girlfriend, and she just got to hear the latter end of that. Hi, are you here? Okay, y'all, I'm gonna be right back, and then we'll get the girlfriend guest appearance on stream, and I'll go back to this poem. Arson Asher, do I also want the context? Yes, I would love the context, because I know that you probably did research based on like the sheet that you showed me, so I'd love to know your the context you can give me, right? So I'll be right back. Hi, stream. Look. Hi. It's Reagan. Come here, Reagan. Come sit.
Okay. Hi.
Reagan is Vix V whenever you see her in chat. Yeah. We're reading a poem right now that Arson Asher sent.
It's a long one.
It's a very long one, and it's in verse, which you heard on the phone. Girlfriend reveal.
Hi. New side character.
Yep. Anyway. I'm gonna sit in the corner now.
I'm gonna pout in the corner.
Yeah. Just so you know, if you stand up, since the flag is in the mirror, anytime you stand up, they'll be able to see you in the mirror. Look! Girlfriend reveal. Yeah. Okay. But yeah. You can just lay down and hang out. Also, Harper, come here. Come here. Dog reveal. He's not new to stream, but this is Harper. I know, Horny Angel, this is your first time here, so this is Harper. He's a good boy. A very good boy. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. But I think we'll try to get OMG, it's a doggo. Yes. Oh. Girl, are you okay?
Yeah. I'm good.
Okay. Okay. You have 3 dogs. I also have 3 dogs. What kind of dogs do you have? Horny Angel. I feel like I should just call you Angel, so I don't have to say Horny Angel every time. Anyway, so Asher, did you send the context of the poem? Did I miss that in chat? Not yet. So I'd love to have that first. I mean, I can see on the internet he's some, like, 19th century old white dead playwright. And that's cool. Fra, so I know a few things. Fra is short for, like, friar, or referring to, like, a religious person. So Fra Pandolf, I presume, right, that piece of wonder now, Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day. So that's referring to, that this is a painting on the wall, right? And theoretically it is painted by some guy named Fra Pandolf. So whenever he's mentioned, he's just the artist, as far as I understand. Oh, you're sending the sheet you made. That works perfectly. Yeah, I'd love to see your interpretation. I think that's a fun little mix-up here. Something different. And, yeah. Discord. If y'all want to join the Discord, come eat some lotuses and never leave. You can join there. Not sent yet. Should be in writing done, probably. I will wait patiently. Anyway, how? Is anyone else working on writing? Do we have any progress? Any people with new things? One of them is a puddle, Romeo. The other are 2 mixed breed. We usually talk about breed, not race, in terms of dogs, but no worries. Forgot the name and all 4 of them, but one is Luna, evil incarnate. The other one is Spike, the baby. He's the most pure-hearted and innocent thing in the world. That's so cute. That's funny, Spike as a pure innocent. Context. This poem is written by Robert Browning. Your handwriting is excellent. Even this stuff. It is set in 1564 in the Renaissance. Based off two people, someone and who were married. Okay, maybe your handwriting's not that amazing. I think it's pretty. It's just not nearly as legible. Duke, Alfonso or something, Agonzol, I don't know, and Ferrara, of Ferrara. Okay, I see. Who married to someone de Medici. Medici, that's a big family. It's not that bad. She was 13 when they married. 16 when she died? What was she doing? What was he doing to her? Oh my gosh. No.
Yes, medieval.
The Duke was 24 when they married. Okay, it could be worse. I mean, just speaking from, like, the standard of the time. Language form. Poem is from one perspective. In the form of a monologue, admiration, something. I don't know what that says. Monologue. Browning does this to show how something the Duke is, but also show how something centered. Also, I'd read summary. Iambic pentameter, so you do know that. That's good. And then metaphors. The whole poem is a metaphor. Actually, the painting and how he talks about it. The Duke talks about it. He uses it as a metaphor for control. Interesting. Summary. Poem is the Duke of Ferrara Ferrara de Medici, talking about his previous wife. Okay, so this is the dead wife in the painting. In the poem, he mentions how jealous he was of her? No? The Duchess, the Duchess, even hinting about, let's say, infidelity. I mean, that is like the middle section, right? In the poem, he is talking to a man who was sent by the next I'm trying. Girls. Next, he wants to marry. I see. It's like a sort of suitor, or person trying to marry them off, whatever. Duke also hints that he may have killed his previous wife. Is that what that says? Arsen Asher? The Duke killed her. Okay, yeah. I think pretty well deciphering. Well, my handwriting is often bad as well. Oh, I like this. Key themes. Power, control, pride. Okay. Awesome. I appreciate your little bits. We'll now go on. So it's not my last Duchess, as in my final Duchess. It's my previous Duchess, perhaps. Or it could be, maybe he's saying it's the last, but it sounds like he's trying to remarry, so maybe not so much. We're going to read again with the underlining. We're going to be using a lot of blue. It's my general color for questions. Green for things I like. Red for critique. Things I think this poet could have done better, which will be difficult. He had 6 wives in total? This guy's busy. Questions, critique, and then just stand out. Things that just hit me and I don't know how I feel yet. That's My Last Duchess painted on the wall. Looking as if she were alive, I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will't please you sit and look at her, I said. Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured continents. The depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you, but I. And seemed as they would ask me if they durst, how such a glance came there, so not the first. Oh, I need to read that again. So sometimes the difficult thing for me about verse, which rhymes with durst and first, is sometimes you're so focused on reading the verse that it's very difficult to actually pay attention to what the poem is saying, which is why the 2 reads at the start can help you be like, oh, I kind of know what's going on, I'm comfortable with the verse, now I can actually analyze, right? The depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you, but I. And seemed as they would ask me if they durst. Can anyone define durst for me? How such a glance came there. I need a dictionary bot. I know they exist. How such a glance came there, so not the first. They ask me how such a glance came there. So, talking about this is just orange. I'll do purple. The earnest glance, how such a glance. I know later it talks about, I think how she looks, again, glancing, but whatever. How such a glance came there, so not the first. Are you to turn and ask thus? Sir, 'twas not. Her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek, perhaps. Okay, so this is ideas of infidelity, I think. Not her husband's presence only. Durst means to venture. It's a biblical word. To venture. So, this is going to take a while. I'm going to break this up so I don't read the whole thing. But basically, with verse and with language we don't understand, and perhaps this can be a helpful idea to you, Angel, is breaking things down sentence by sentence, because this to me is like pretty close to a different language. I mean, it's a different dialect, right? So it's a different time. So if I want to understand, it can be useful to break down what everything means. I'm going to show you that process. So that's my Last Duchess painted on the wall. So that's pretty simple. We just have this portrait. Can I get a brown pen? I always need a brown pen. Brown. Add. So we have this like painting, because she's not literally going to be painted on the wall. And we have this Duchess painted in, I'm sure, very fine Renaissance fashion. Whatever. Right? Probably a pretty dress or something. Not important. Looking as if she were alive, I call that piece a wonder now. So she's painted on the wall. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful that she looks alive, and I call that piece a wonder. So this is really just saying, this is a very impressive piece of art. Easy enough. Fra Pandolf's hands. So this is the painter. Oftentimes, religious people were the ones who did art. Sometimes, not always. Okay. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day. So he worked hard on it, and there she stands. Worked busily a day, and there she stands. I like the use of stands here because it almost makes it sound like she's alive, she's standing, as if she were alive, which is pretty cool. And then, wilt please you sit and look at her, I said. So this is literally like asking someone to like look at this picture of my dead wife, which is fine. Fra Pandolf, by design, for never read, strangers like you that pictured continents. This is, I don't quite know what this is saying, so I'm going to break it down. The painter, by design, so the painter intended, if something is by design, it means it was intended. Fra Pandolf, by design, for never read, strangers like you that pictured continents. So this you can sort of rearrange. For never read strangers like you could basically never read for you. Strangers like you is just basically saying you, right? As to say, I think that like this is not intended for others. Maybe that pictured continents being her, right? The depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by. So it's also good to break down like when this sentence ends so we know what we're talking about. Fra Pandolf all the way through until a period or a semicolon works as like the end there. So Fra Pandolf did not intend something about strangers on the continents, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turned. Is this referring to Fra Pandolf? Or the strangers? Strangers like you. It's not literally talking about the person he's talking to. But to myself they turned, since none puts by. Parentheticals we can sort of ignore, in a sense, within a sentence. 90% of the poem is the Duke yapping. I just want to know exactly what he's yapping about, because it's interesting. I think him yapping is interesting. So, but to myself they turned and seemed as if they would ask me if they venture, if they durst. Oh, ask me if they durst. So, like, ask me if they dare. Just like sort of a question that is maybe a bit risky to ask. How much a glance came there? How such a glance came there? So not the first. Yeah, so they're asking basically like why she looks like this, why she's making whatever glance, whatever face, whatever expression. How such a glance came there. So not the first. How such a glance came there. So not the first. Are you to turn and ask thus? Sir, 'twas not. Her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek, perhaps. So then, basically the idea that strangers, as in others, are potentially a presence in her existence that brought the same sort of joyful look that the Duke brought. Which, yes, you mentioned in your analysis, Asher, infidelity, which I think is an excellent thing to notice. Infidelity is not an excellent thing. I'm looking at my girlfriend right now. Infidelity, it's a good observation. And it's sort of like what this opening section is about, but it is Old English, and thus it is hard. So, good job. Perhaps, for a Pandulph chanced to say her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint. Her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much. So, mantle is like clothing, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy she had. Oh my gosh. This is so hard. Also means blush. Yeah. And they do say here, half flush, spot of joy on the cheek, a blush, all that, right? That dies along her throat, right? So it's the blush on the cheek. This is a nice way to say again, just talking about that same blush on the cheek. Half flush that dies along the throat. So it's on the face. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought. Ugh. My God, verse is so hard. Because I want to read this section. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. Oh. Okay, so I think what this is saying. Frau Pandulph chanced to say, maybe. So the painter is saying, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much. So that's one thing. Or paint must never hope to reproduce this. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. So that she was getting the blush from Frau Pandulph's painting of her? Maybe. So maybe she was down bad for the painter. I don't know. Maybe not. This is a potential interpretation. I think that's what it means. As two meanings, because the Duke strangled her. Sent someone to have her strangled. That's wonderful and kind and super not cool. Anyway, because right, she had a heart, how shall I say, too soon be made glad, too easily impressed, so potentially by Frau Pandulph, our boy, right? She looked on and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one, my favour at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bow of cherries some officious fool. Okay, so that's all just so this is just saying that she has a roving eye. She's promiscuous. A word that my mom uses to describe me far too often. If you're still on chat, Mom. Sir 'twas all one, my favour at her breast. The dropping of the daylight in the west. So, this is sunset, right? So if we think about the dropping of daylight, the sun going down in the west, that is sunset. And these are little things where, like, if you just read over that line quickly, it's like, I don't know what that means, but if you just say, again, so just do a sunset at. So at sunset, the bough of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule. She rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech. Or blush at least, she thanked men good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked. So this is saying that, like, men would come into the orchard and bring her, cherries, food, flirt. She thanked them. Thanked them. I don't know how. He knows how. And would draw from her the approving speech or the blush, right? The approving speech, as mentioned before, when talking about Fra Pandolf. Easily impressed, right? That's what I was thinking of. Easily impressed, courtesy, but she was, that, right? As if she ranked, somehow I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift. Ego. So this is saying, I don't know how she thought anyone else could be better than me because I am royal and of the Medici family, I think. If that's the case, then he's like one of the most powerful people in Venice, if I'm remembering that correctly. Unless she was from the Medici family. I mean, she was a Medici. Like, they're pretty legit. Duke Alfonso II. That's what that says. Of Ferrara, yeah. Why are you looking at me like that?
Because you're fitting.
Okay. So this guy's like... Oh, so he looks pretty legit. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, he had 3 marriages. Was he sterile? He was sterile, guys. Well, no, what? No wonder she was going off with other men. Is a king? Huh? No. I'm talking about this one. Marriages. Okay. Lucrezia di Cosimo de Medici. That's who we're talking about. She's pretty. Yeah, House of Medici was like... They were bankers. In Florence. They were super powerful. They were like the patrons of like Michelangelo and stuff. They had so much money. And they made double entry bookkeeping. That was really important. Yeah, they were patrons of Donatello, Brunelleschi, Botticelli, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, Machiavelli, Galileo, and Redi, whoever that is. They funded the invention of the piano, and arguably that of opera. So I don't really know why this guy has such a big head over his title, because, like, you've been to the Medici house in Florence? That's wild. That's super cool. So, like, to be fair, like, yeah, he's, like, a duke with a, like, powerful name, but she also is, so I think he's got a bit of an ego on his head, and I also have a tendency to not talk about. I have a tendency to not trust the man who strangled his wife or had his wife strangled to death. I think we have a bit of a. Here's an idea that we haven't talked about before. What is it? A untrustworthy is not the right word, but narrator. There's another word for this that's the actual literary term that I forgot. But basically, sometimes you have a narrator, and whenever someone is talking from like their perspective, unreliable. They are talking with their own biases, always. And depending on the subject, we might consider that they're an unreliable narrator because, for example, he is talking about the wife that he had killed, which means his testimony, if you will, on this situation is going to be a little bit, maybe a little dicey, right? And that's an important thing in a lot of literature. I would say Bukowski is an excellent example of writing the unreliable narrator. I would say that, I don't know, who are the most famous unreliable narrators? Unreliable narrators. Examples. Reddit. Wuthering Heights is the main one you'd go for. This person. Nick Carraway in Great Gatsby. He's this, like, rich boy who just, like, I don't even remember what happens in that book, but is generally pretty unlikable. And if you take an unreliable narrator at their word, generally you're not engaging with the literature to the degree that you maybe should be, right? Is the point. Humbert from Lolita. He is like super unreliable narrator. He abducts his wife's daughter. She remarried, so he's her stepdad. And then takes her on a cross-country American road trip. And every single night essays her. And doesn't describe the acts in detail, thank God, but describes his view on the situation and how much he loves this, like, 14-year-old girl. And it is one of the most abhorrent, beautiful pieces of literature ever written because of how well it shows you the unreliable narrator. It's this guy who's super charismatic in Nabokov's writing. In his writing of Humbert, he does a really good job writing this funny, likable, charismatic character, but unreliable narrator, right? So that's the idea, and that's what I'm going with for this guy. So, with anybody's gift, who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling, even had you in skill, in speech which I have not to make your will. Okay. My gift of a 900 years old name. With anybody's gift, who'd stop to blame this sort of trifling, even had you skill. Verse is so hard. In speech which I have not to make your will, quite clear to such an one and sage as this, or that in you disgust me here you miss, or there. So, he's giving more reasons, as far as I can tell, that he's better than other people. He's saying, even if they had, like, no one, he's saying, I have a 900 years old name, I'm royalty, the people should, like me. And he said, why would you like someone else more, even if they had skill in speech, which I have not. So he's saying he's like not a very literate, poetic person. So L, not interested. I would not date this man. Also, the 3 wives killing one of that part. To make your will quite clear to such as one, and say just this, or that, just this, or that in you discuss me, here you miss, or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be less than so, nor plainly set, her wits to yours forsooth, and made excuse. What is this saying? This is why Old English is hard. My favorite unreliable narrator is in Mother Night by Vonnegut. I will have to check that out. I have not read it. I've read very little Vonnegut. I've read Slaughterhouse-Five, which is the funniest book I've ever read, which of course is about the bombing of Dresden, and he somehow makes it the funniest book I've ever read. So that's good. It's on that shelf there. Great book. To make your will quite clear. It's on the top shelf, right? How can he say he has no skill in speech when he's literally yapping? Well, to be fair, this is... So we have to separate... There's sort of like a poetic irony here in the medium, right? Which I have not. This is almost the poet taking a dig at him, because it's what it feels like. It feels very like kind of funny that he's saying like this guy was not well spoken, and that's something we talked about before, the idea of like separating the subject from the poet, because none of this is actually the Duke's words. This is Robert Browning's words. So it creates this sort of irony of knowing that this is Robert Browning's skill of speech imposed onto someone who does not have that, which is a sort of interesting irony that happens here based on the medium. So this is really cool. I actually like that a lot. That's a good point, Arson Asher, and I think that's my answer to that, right? Because I doubt he was actually yapping in verse for multiple pages. I doubt he was truly yapping as such. He was a noble who valued his blood. He had no interest in the arts or speech, because he cared more about marrying 3. It doesn't even rhyme. Anyway. Whatever. It's hard to speak in verse. Quite clear to such an one and sage as this, or that in you discuss me, here you miss. So if someone had skill to make their will clear and say that she is disgusting or is not good in certain ways, and if she let herself be less than so I think this is now him just being mean to her. I think this is him being mean. He's saying in his own sense that she disgusts him, and that other people with their skill in speech should be doing that, or that anyone with skill in speech would also see that she's disgusting, which is mean. This is a really mean guy. Her wits to yours forsooth, and made excuse. In then would be some stooping, and I choose never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, Whene'er I passed her, but who passed without, such thus him smile this grew I gave commands. So this is saying, like, you know, no matter who passed her, she would smile. She was down for everyone. And he's not gonna stoop to the level of someone like her. This grew I gave commands. Then all smile stop together, there she stands. Oh, yeah, I gave the command to kill her. That's what that says, right? This grew I gave commands, then all smile stop together, right? If all the smiles have stopped, she is dead. She does not get to see anyone if she will not only see me. There she stands, as if alive, right? Another indication that as if alive, which means she isn't because of the commands. Will't please you rise, we'll meet the company below, then I repeat. The count your master's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretense of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self as I avowed. At starting is my object, nay will go together down Sir Notice Neptune, though taming a seahorse thought a rarity, which Claus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. So then this is just this sort of scary ending, I guess, right after the fact that he says he killed the last wife, is that now there's company over, giving him dowry, giving him a bronze horse, or giving him a bronze seahorse, which is probably a difficult thing to give. So I think this poem is really Robert Browning saying, like, this guy really sucked, which is good. But I could be wrong, but, like, Robert Browning, feminist? Probably not. Let's see. Dramatic monologues, Victorian, noted for irony, dark humor. Yeah, so again, I think we got that. We got the irony of this guy talking as such. We got the little jabs of irony as a poet and him saying that he can't speak. We got the dark humor of then having this other person show up for the dowry for the remarriage. So I think that's kind of the point of this poem, which is pretty cool. Oh, that's so cute. As long as there wasn't a remarriage. He lived in Italy. Yeah, he was liberal, supporting the emancipation of women. I said it. Feminist, Robert Browning. Okay. Wait, that's really awesome. So I think we got it. That is what this is. This is freaking 19th century. 19th century feminism, kind of. Which is, like, super exciting. This does say feminism. FEMINISM. Which makes me like this poem a lot. I think it's really cool. It's looking at the backwardsness of the Renaissance and how this guy treated his wife. So I think that's super cool. Yeah, I love this poem so much, not gonna lie. I agree. That's super sick. I should do critique for Robert because it's what I'm supposed to do, which is totally, like, I mean, if anything, I would tell him to do more of this stuff with his little, like, ironic dig here, but maybe I missed things, right? He definitely does have, like, sort of, I think there's a lot of, like, probably, like, innuendo here. Um, but, uh, hmm. How would I do this better? That's really hard, right? To critique something. It feels really hard to critique something that's supposed to be like a really good poem, right? And a poem in a medium, verse poetry, that I am not familiar with, right? That makes it really hard. Oh, I don't like it. There was one part where you used the word approving, right? Would draw from her alike the approving speech. This is an extra syllable. Hi and hello, Jane Inkheart. Welcome. I'm currently trying to find ways to critique Robert Browning, who is a dead 19th century poet and playwright, because we've just analyzed his poem, The Last Duchess, which turns out is a 19th century poem basically in support of women and them having, men not having so much power over them, as I interpret it, which is good. So this line would draw from her a like the, and I read it as the proving speech, because like you can do that in verse, or like these combine. Would draw from her a like the proving speech, because the approving would draw from her a like the approving speech. See how that blows up? Whoa! Rating with a party of 10. Oh my gosh, welcome. I don't even know how to say it. Mystery emoji, there we go. Welcome everyone rating. Oh my gosh. So, I'll do a little introduction. My name is Ginny, also known as Two-Thirds Lotus, everywhere on the internet. By joining my chat, you are now my good girls, boys, theys, and fae. And we are doing some analysis of a poem. This is something one of my viewers sent, which is The Last Duchess by Robert Browning. He's a 19th century poet. And it turns out that even though he's an old dead white dude, this was actually in support of women and kind of feminist, which was cool. And something I always tell everyone when I'm sort of teaching poetry like this is to always be a critic. So right now we are finding ways to critique and improve this poem, which is, fairly famous and well known. So it's a little bit like daunting. But this channel is super participatory, basically. So if you have things you want me to review of yours or just analyze, even if you're brand new, doesn't matter to me. We have a submission form. So if you have poetry, prose, play, script, whatever, absolutely. The poem about how he literally had his last flight killed. Yes. Yes. I do think this because it's an ironic poem, and it is ironic. Yes, it is about a duke killing his wife and finding another. However, this is an unreliable narrator, and it puts him in a bad light, and we found a lot of reasons why. A lot of irony in the way he speaks and the way that Robert Browning views this unreliable narrator. So he talks about, it's really an indication of the bad character of the Duke. And I say this because, particularly in this middle section, he talks about, he has this like ego to him where he talks about the gift of his 900 years old name, right? And even though he's married to a princess, basically, or duchess of the Medici family, the most powerful family in Italy, he talks about the lack of verbal skill that the Duke actually has. And that being said, which I have not. So this is actually, in my opinion, Robert Browning taking a dig at the Duke himself, showing us that he believes he's sort of unreliable, unskilled, not very impressively worded as a person. And then continues to talk about, how he kills her and all of that. And seeing how much dowry he can get. Yeah. And I do, this is a representation and a critique. And if we look at Browning, liberal, supported the emancipation of women, opposed slavery, expressing sympathy for the North, etc., stalwart against anti-Semitism, uses his poetry, if we look at the first line, basically, of this page, social commentary, irony, characterization, dark humor. So, yeah, it is a darkly humorous poem, which is using a subject matter that is super dicey and super bad, admittedly, but that's why we take time to dig in and really listen to the poem, because that's when you notice these tiny little, digs at things like that. And of course, that's my interpretation. Aang, you might have another interpretation of My Last Duchess, which says that the poem itself is in support of this thing, but this is a guy in the 19th century who is a liberal writing on this topic for a reason, and I can't imagine he's writing it to say he wants a backwards world like this. So, again, and maybe that's a point of critique. And it's a point of critique coming from far off in the future where we have less of an understanding of his language and who he was, but it can be unclear and misrepresented. And I talked about this in a viewer's poem, All American Game Show, last stream, where when we're writing about things that are political and sensitive, it can be really important to be specific, because otherwise I think things can be misinterpreted and people can say this is a poem about how he literally had his last wife killed, is feminist, right? Like, that doesn't make sense to you. And I think that that's because maybe we lack a perspective and an amount of sort of specificity from him. But again, things get less specific over time in a sense, and that's really interesting. When we have a poem from 100 years ago, and now we try to read it, 150 even, right? It can be really hard to understand what they're saying now. Because at this point, it's like, we can't even, I had to ask my viewers to look up words for me. This is a hard poem to read. It's in verse. It's in iambic pentameter. It is talking about a world that we don't understand from the perspective of a world we don't also understand, right? And it's really interesting how things age as such, right? In All American Game Show by Zone of Zones, we talked about this sort of axis of specificity. And since the poem got less specific over time, more just less interpretable, in a clear way, we end up with more different interpretations as to say that maybe it isn't feminist satire, maybe it's actually a bad poem. And I was actually pretty quick upon looking at this poem being by white dead dude Robert Browning to personally say, oh, maybe this isn't going to be a good poem, a poem with a good message, or a poem that I really want to listen to. yet. That's exactly why we research and listen to the entire poem and sort of not make those assumptions too quickly, because you can find what I think is an incredibly beautiful piece of art speaking to the backwardsness, the mistreatment of women at a time when that also wasn't necessarily a common thing to say. Through a satirical poem, a very ironic poem, and that happens throughout history, interpreting irony as serious. So I think it's really important then why we sit and we've spent an hour and a half with this poem on stream, because that is the only way that you're going to take something that's very difficult to understand and distill it down into the message that I think it's actually trying to say. And again, it's my interpretation. Maybe a quick Google search will tell me that this poem is actually really messed up and that Robert Browning is a messed up person. But it also looks like maybe that's not the case. So that being said, whenever we analyze, we always read one more time, because now we get some more context on our poem, and now we can read it even better and perform it better, because I'm a performer by art. I'm on Twitch, right? So, My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive, I call that piece a wonder now, for Pandulph's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will't please you sit and look at her? I said. For Pandulph by design for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you, but I, and seemed as they would ask me if they durst, how such a glance came there, so not the first. Are you to turn and ask thus, sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek, perhaps? Fra Pandolph chanced to say her mantle laps over my lady's wrist, too much or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy she had, a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whate'er she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one, my favour at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west. The bough of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike approving speech, or blush at least. She thanked men good, but thanked somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900 years old name with anybody's gift who'd stoop to blame. This sort of trifling, even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such as one, and say just this, or that in you discuss me here you miss, or there exceed the mark, and if she let herself be lessened so, nor plainly set her wit to yours forsooth, and made excuse, in then be some stooping, in then be some stooping, in then would be some stooping, and I choose. Verse is hard, y'all. Never to stop, oh sir, she smiled no doubt, whene'er I passed her, but who passed without much the same smile. This grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. There she stands, as if alive. Will't please you rise? We'll meet. As if alive, will't please you rise, we'll meet the company below. Then I repeat, the Count your master's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretence of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed, at starting is my object, nay, will go together down Sir Notice Neptune, though taming a seahorse thought a rarity, would Klaus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. Yeah. Like, he ends being, like, greedy and, like, gross and old and disgusting, which is, like, the point of the poem. I think that's really cool. It's not cool to be gross and a noble in Italy who kills your wife, but I think this is actually a really good satirical use of that. I had someone follow during that. Looks like Miss isn't popping up. But thank you for the follow, whoever that was. If you actually tell me who that was, I'll say your name and thank you properly. Because that is something that I ought to do for someone who will follow my work through. Listen to the poems which I do read upon the Twitch window that's on your screen. Boom. Got it. We're gonna need a point redeem for streaming in iambic pentameter for like 15 minutes. I think that's super funny. Once I get affiliate, which is like probably after that stream, because my average viewers is like actually insane now. Got it. That was good. Well, thank you. So that's the end of that one.